Hello and welcome back to SlimDevOps Live. Exciting one this week because community participation, which is always good. Now, before we get into that, I should introduce the people here that are joining me on stream. So we have Ayse and Eric joining us. And Ayse, if I could just ask you to introduce yourself and explain who you are.
Sure. Hi, everyone in the audience. Eric, Martin. This is Ayse. I'm a slimmer working for Slim.AI, focused on strategic insights and analytics. I'm thrilled to be joining in the live stream here. Martin invited me to this specific one, and I suspect that that's because I'm the biggest fan of R in the Slim team. Exactly. Like in a politically divisive world, right, Eric? One needs to take sides, and I'm in the R camp.
Of course.
And so that's a perfect segue. So, Eric, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Well, hello, everybody out there. Yeah, my name is Eric Nantz, and by day, I'm a principal research scientist at a life sciences company doing all sorts of statistics and data science for, designing trials and doing a whole bunch of advanced analytical things. And by night or on my off time, I am a huge advocate for the R language for statistical computing. I use it in my day job as well as my personal projects, and I do some advocacy in the community. I am host of the R podcast, which is where my handle's from, as well as host of the R Weekly Highlights podcast and the Shiny Developer series for creating web applications with R. So I'm thrilled to be here, Martin. Thank you for the invite.
Excellent. Well, you're here. Let me just explain why you're here. And I'll also explain why Peter, who usually joins me, is not here. Peter decided to step aside, given that his last appearance here, he was doing a Python example. He felt like, that was a bit like oil on water, and we should probably not have him on for the R segment. Anyway,
he's in the chat. He's active in the chat.
Yes, he is here. Yeah. In fact, I should say hello. Hello to Monica and Yannick, and also Peter. Thank you for stopping by. So, Eric, a couple of weeks ago, we put out a call to action, a challenge, if you will, to ask developers to have a go at creating a Slim Docker container using DockerSlim of an application of their own or one that they love or like, and you answered the call. So, we're going to have a look at R in containers in a little bit with some live examples, but why was it you were motivated to answer that call?
So this was a great opportunity because in my day work, as well as some personal projects, I have seen just how much agility, how much optimization I can have by having self-contained containers, if you will, that bundle all of my analytical workflow dependencies, whether they're from the R package repositories themselves or through just Linux binaries, if I'm hooking to other systems or APIs. And it's really given me a way to deploy production machine learning AI models in a seamless way. And also with the web applications I create with Shiny, they're not just these very basic things of hello worlds. These are interacting with different systems, HPC, AI, AWS, you name it. It's interacting with all these things. And so these containers just get huge. I mean, gigabytes in size. And the IT team will look at me like, are you really? But when Slim came around, DockerSlim, I thought, well, wait, why can't it work here? And I saw the Python examples and thought, let's give it a shot. Let's see what we can do with R and particularly Shiny applications and see where it takes us.
Excellent. And I'm really glad that you did. In fact, we all are, because it took us on quite the journey. Now, before I get into a sort of a demonstration of what we learned and how to work with slimming R in containers, Ayse, is there anything you want to add before we dig into it?
I mean, I know we can, like with Eric in the room, we can go deep into the forest without losing our way into the advanced topics and things like that. But I wanted to linger on that point around containers, why they matter for data science, specifically in R, like using them can you just download R in our studio and install all the packages and libraries? And is R particularly vulnerable to change, like to operating system, different R versions, different packages and libraries? Why you were focused on Dockerization or Rockerization of the R packages that you had?
We have seen, and especially in my day work, no matter how many instructions I set of like, use this version of R, use this package library, rarely do people listen, and they will try to run R in all sorts of different operating systems, all sorts of different environments. And it gets to a point where in order to get your job done, it's just easier to contain the full stack as best as you can and have full control over that more repeatable pattern of getting all your dependencies lined up. It just saves us a boatload of time, and it makes sure that we eliminate any esoteric differences in system libraries that R depends on, operating system dependencies. It just makes our development life just so much easier. And if you don't take care for it, R is definitely vulnerable, like other software stacks, to these kind of differences, and it's just sometimes a nightmare to debug. So it's been helping me out immensely.
I have a feeling that you have some interesting stories. Some like sweat, tear, and blood involved, some frustration, toning
very much
issues, and things like that. But that's all I wanted to ask, Martin. Go ahead.
Okay then. Well, with that, let's get into the steps required to minify an R/Shiny app that Eric actually created for us. So I'm going to run through this now. I've got a terminal here and a browser. This is going to work a little differently from how we've done things in the past. So the first thing is I've got a directory here with some files in it. And what we're going to do is, if I take a look here, I've got a Docker file, a script, and a text file. R path includes. So if we take a look at the Docker file, now you can get this, Eric put this in his GitHub. So this is the small app example from Eric's GitHub. So the link is here. And this is what we're working with, and this is the Docker file, which uses Rocker as like a base image. So Eric, can you just explain what Rocker is?
Yeah, so Rocker is a set of Docker files, Docker images that have been created by some of the leading members of the R community, especially involved in the HPC space, like Dirk Edebutel, the author of RCPP, along with a couple others that have been involved in more of the open science side of things. And they're they're kind of the state of the art with R users and incorporating Docker containers. They are either based in Debian or Ubuntu, and they try to take care of common workflows, like some tailored to machine learning, some tailored to the RStudio environment for developing your code, some tailored to even Shiny. They have lots of images for a lot of those stacks.
Thanks.
You can go back to R 3.0 with that, right? The versioning is pretty.
Absolutely. They take a lot of care in making sure you can reproduce a lot of these concepts in multiple versions. Yeah.
Excellent. So you've then created this Docker file, which installs a bunch of packages, and in so doing, it then compiles some code. And if I wanted to, I could build that image using this command. But in the interests of time, we won't be doing that today, because that takes some time to download all of the things and compile all the code. So what I'm going to do is use a Docker image that John, our CEO, prepared. So he has prepared an image here. And I've already got it, but I will just rerun it there. So he's Johnny. He goes by Johnny Slim, and he created Slim test R Shiny. And if I just take a look at the Docker images there, we can see here's the Docker image that John created with your small app inside it. Let's be clear about that, your small app. And that's 1.29 gigabytes, that container. And then I also pulled down the Rocker base container here, and we can see that that's 824 megabytes. So it's adding the app, and the dependencies for the app is adding about 460 megabytes to the Rocker container. So that's our starting point. And what we'll do is actually run oops, I'm in the wrong terminal. Run the, it helped if I actually don't double type. So we've got one, I'm going to call this one fat test. So here we go. We're going to run this container under the name of fat test. We're going to bind your app to port 7123, which is what you picked as an arbitrary port. And we're going to use this container to spark it up. So if I do that, we can see that the app is listening on the port. Now, we didn't realize this at the time, but this is our first clue right now that we were going to run into some difficulty. You'll see that it says listening on the port. And if I go to the browser and open up a browser pointing at that app, so I'll just do that now. If you look at the terminal, just where it says listening, you'll notice something happens as I load the application. So we get some warnings that there are some shared objects that couldn't be found. And what that's actually telling us is that having the app running doesn't actually activate it or stimulate it. It sort of sits there in an idle state, and it isn't until it sees an active connection that the application loads and the application has been fully stimulated, which is important to DockerSlim, as we'll see a little bit later on. So here's your sample app. I can drag this slider around if I'm in the right screen, and there we go. We can see the app working. So unsurprisingly, the container that you created works. And I did wonder, looking at some of these libraries that this failed to find, their libxt is the X intrinsic, so that's a widget, a low-level widget set for X, and then we see RX11 wasn't found. So I'm wondering if the Rocker container has already seen some kind of manual minification to remove some things that maybe it doesn't need. Given that those are absent. So this could already be a best case starting place for the Rocker container. So anyway, that's that app running. So let's get into actually minifying it. So we've got two files which we're going to use to do that. So if we just look in here, we've got minify.bash and rpath includes. So if I just look at the minify, it's a shell script, and this is going to just wrap the DockerSlim build command. So we're telling it there's a few parameters here that are most interesting. Target is the container that we want to operate on and Slim. The include path file. This references a file. And we're going to explain what that file is used for in a bit more detail in just a moment. And then the other one that's important and relates to my earlier point is the HTTP probe equals false. So what we're not going to do is have DockerSlim automatically stimulate the app inside the container. So let's just explain why we're doing those things. So in some cases, it's necessary to use the include path file parameter. And that's because some of the application stacks, you need to provide some additional hints as to what needs to be retained in the slimmed container in order for the application to work. That's true in some cases for Python and Ruby, and we discovered it's also the case with R. So if we just take a little look at that file, It's just a text file, and it's basically a list of directory paths. And what that says is, in addition to what else DockerSlim identifies as stuff the application needs, these things will always also be included. And this was an extra step of analysis that John did, actually using a sort of the beta version of our SaaS platform, which we'll be announcing soon, which has got some facilities to actually explore the layering of Docker images. And this is how he was able to determine what was missing that we actually needed to retain. So that's the purpose of that R path includes file. And something we're thinking of doing is to use this as a template, this exercise as a template to create some recipes for other popular languages and containers, so that you don't have to do this analysis and digging yourself. You'll have some off-the-shelf, tools to help you along. And then the other thing we're doing is we're not stimulating the probe automatically. And that's because some stacks require more advanced container probing to make sure that all of the dynamically loaded components are detected. And R and Shiny happen to fall into that category as well. And this is something I think you and I, Eric, can touch on in a little bit more detail a bit later. So what we're going to be doing is telling DockerSlim, don't probe automatically, and then we're going to manually stimulate the container in order to execute it, and then DockerSlim will be able to observe what resources files the application requires. So we're just going to run the Minify script, and that will start the container, and then we see this text on the screen. So this is saying to me, go and run my application, which I will do now. And when I have finished exercising the application, which DockerSlim is observing, I can go back to DockerSlim and tell it that I'm done. So I'm going to refresh. So we're now running the container again, and behind the scenes, DockerSlim is looking at what is happening inside the container in order to determine what files it needs to retain. So we have done that. So we come back to DockerSlim, and we're just going to hit enter here, and it will finish the process. So it's now going to create a Slim container based on what it observed and those additional bits we gave it. And if we look up here, we will see that we've now got a minified container that is about 6 times smaller than the original. It says that the new container is 215 megabytes in size.
That's a big savings.
So that's about 10 megabytes better than the last time I spoke to you about this, Eric. I found another saving earlier. So let's just take a look at what we've got here. So if we look at the Docker images now.
By the way, Martin, I mean, the interactivity, the conversation is one of the beautiful features of these live streams. I'm keeping tabs on the chat. There is this, like, Peter was complaining about how the R folks wouldn't let him in this time because he did the Python example. And French guy CH says Python is the best language in the world, which is true by a lot of surveys. But like, statistical computing, math guys, inference guys might be thinking differently for certain aspects. But I just wanted to, and there is another question, but maybe we can just answer those questions a little later as we go through the flow. But please, everyone, do not wait till the end. Like we're looking into the chat stream. Ask your questions, and we will try to answer.
Yeah, please do post your questions. I've seen yours there. Yannick is French guy, CH. So I'll get to that a little bit later, Yannick. I'll get to that. So if I look at Docker images, we'll see we've now got a new container here. So it has the same name as the one we started with, but with the Slim suffix, and we can see it was created 45 seconds ago, and it is indeed 215 megabytes in size. So now what we need to do is run that Slim container, And I'll call this one Slim test, and we're going to run, with the Slim suffix. So just as we did before, but we're running the Slim container now, and we can see it's listening. And if we go to the browser and refresh.
So it's slimmer, but is it working, functioning?
It's slimmer, but it still works. And this was, it looks simple when you have the prefabricated answers, but this was actually some effort to actually figure all of this out. So kudos to John for tackling that one. So there we go. So we now have a functioning container. And if I just kill that, one of the things that we would sometimes do is curl or what have you. So if I run that container again, you'll notice when I was starting the app in the web browser, it stimulated the app.
Yes.
But if I curl the URL, it doesn't stimulate the app. I get some HTML back, but it doesn't actually cause the app to load. And in effect, this is sort of kind of what DockerSlim does by default in the background. So this was one of those topics where we could dig into a little bit more, Eric. So that's it. We now have a Slim container. So, 6 times smaller than what we started with, and it works just the same. And what we're going to do now, or not now, but next, is figure out how we can, not today, but in a subsequent one of these, is how we can automatically stimulate those Shiny apps so that you can automate your CI/CD process in order to automatically generate Slim containers of your apps that you can then put directly into production, knowing that they work properly.
Yep, and I had a little attempt at this the other night, trying one of the tricks in Shiny where, I won't go into too much detail, but that histogram that you saw on the right side, behind the scenes, there is a reactive process that is kind of lazy by design. It's waiting for you to go to that slider and move it around. It is trying to save time, save resources, because these apps do a whole bunch of stuff, especially the ones I make. They're not trivial. So Shiny by design will be very lazy about those things. So I was trying to tell Shiny, even though I know you're lazy by default, don't suspend your operations when it's, quote, hidden in the console. And I did that tweak. I do that tweak all the time for my day-to-day stuff. It had no effect. So we've got to go a little more low level than that. But I've got other ideas too that I'm sure we'll pursue.
And something that I tried is DockerSlim has a feature where you can execute a command inside the container. And I tried using that as well to actually run the app inside the container, but it was still in a lazy state. So that didn't have the desired effect either. But we will plug away at that.
Sure.
Now, Ayse, you've also been working with R and some apps in containers recently, right? Oh,
we lost your audio.
Are you muted or?
I am muted.
Oh,
I was muted. Sorry about that.
That's fine.
Yeah, we had some technical issues before, and that's why Martin is just like, no, Ayse might have issues along the path, so we'll see. But you could hear me all good and well, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I've been experimenting with some R scripts. Particularly, I wrote a sentiment analysis for a text mining analysis for our community channels, our Discord and Gitter and whatnot, to understand the emotions, the sentiment scores, the basic word clouds and maps and things like that. And I am turning that into a Shiny app, and I'll be containerizing it right after. And it will have a lot more libraries and packages like the NLP, the TM library, the Suzette. I'll probably be using a couple different algorithms in the process. So I'm interested in seeing how a more complex Shiny app will be slimmed down and still working on those record images.
Yeah, you and me both. In the repo that Martin showed, there is a big app folder, which ironically is something that I created in our racing escapades back a few months ago. And it's not really doing any data science specific heavy things, but it's got a lot more package dependencies, a lot more like HTML, glitzy kind of designer, UI packages. So you can see here in the Docker file, it's got a lot more R specific packages it's installing, which in turn does a whole bunch of more dependencies. And I want to see if the same techniques that Martin showed here will work with that app as well.
As am I.
Cool. Yours sound much more advanced than mine, but I would love to interact along the way, Eric, and see, like, like step by step, right? If my app works, the chances that your app is going to work is increasing too. So I might be pinging you along the way.
You definitely have my interest. Yeah, I'd love to collaborate on it. Yeah.
So, yes, I'm going to take the big app. I had a go at it earlier. I think there's a little bit of fettling we need to do, but I have a high degree of confidence that we'll be able to create a general purpose recipe for our and Shiny apps that are derived from the Rocker container as a base starting point, as a nice, easy way to get going. And with your help, Eric, I'm hoping that we'll be able to collaborate with the upstream R and Rocker community in order to sort of bake some of this into, their work, so that, anyone that's working with R, because from the outside looking in, I get the general impression that most, let's say, developers using R are not what you would consider traditional software developers. They tend to be statisticians and mathematicians first, who happen to do some software development, and the tools that they have are simply tools. They're not, programmers. Right.
Yep, that's accurate. I'm definitely an outlier in this space because I helped in my grad school days administer Linux servers, build applications as part of our consulting work. So I got that other side of development side of things. But yeah, the typical R user is just give me the script, give me the packages, let me turn loose on data science.
Right. Yeah.
I was listening to this research presentation the other day, Eric, and the speaker was claiming that Dockerization, these containers, they have the capacity to turn data scientists into data engineers in that way, that they won't have to wait for the engineers to or deployment, like the processing, the production environments. Like they can be data engineers without being an expert on infrastructure, cutting through the complexity and challenges. I would love to hear your take on that. Could this technology be helping data scientists?
It can certainly help on a lot of levels, but I don't think it ever truly replaces the need to think critically about how these systems are integrating together and how you're able to deploy these in production without hiccups. It's the old adage of with great power comes great responsibility. It definitely gives you a lot of capabilities, but I think we all have seen some people take containers in directions that they probably never were intended to go. But I think with the right mindset, the right principles, the best practices in place, it certainly alleviates some of the burden that they might have on their, say, IT colleagues to help them along the way if they become proficient in these best practices. And that Rocker project that we're mentioning does try to implement a lot of the best practices that at least they've learned about when they've developed these containers. That's a good point.
Yep. And DockerSlim is also another tool in the toolkit to help adhere to best practice when you're working with containers, because it will help reduce the attack surface by removing the components you don't need inside the container, and also create your security profiles and things of that nature. And these are all topics that we'll get into in more detail as we explore other language ecosystems and frameworks in the future.
Great.
So I don't think this is the last time we'll be seeing you here with us, Eric, because I know Ayse wants to dig into what she's been working on in more detail and provide a sort of a deep dive on what she's been creating. And I think it would be good to have you back when we do that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Sounds exciting.
Yeah. So we'll schedule that for a couple of weeks from now. And
Cool.
we've got another live stream coming up this week, in fact. So on Thursday, we have got Marty Brobeck coming from Priceline. He's the CTO at Priceline, and he will be joining John Amaral, who's our CEO and co-founder. And they're going to be talking about travel tech developer experience and cloud native development. So that's in 2 days, similar time. Check the Twitch schedule for details, or follow us on Twitter at SlimDevOps, and you can find out when we go live there. And in the meantime, up above my head there, Slim.AI is the website. In the footer of that website, you can find all of the places to connect with the community. So we've got Discord channels and other places where you can get involved. So if you've got additional questions that we haven't answered here, and I'm going to get to some of those that people have brought up today, then do come and join our Discord and we'll answer them there. So, to the questions. Yannick asked, the self-hosted version of Bitwarden is composed of 10 Docker containers. This is true. And this is the official implementation of the Vault for Bitwarden, and you can use something like Docker Compose in order to sort of bring those together under one banner, or you can cheat. You can use Vault Warden, which is a single microservice implementation of the same AI developed by the community, implemented in Rust. So if you're doing it for yourself, then that's a way easier way to go. But Bitwarden is on my radar as a good example to use with collections and Docker Compose and DockerSlim in conjunction with Docker Compose to sort of show some more advanced use of those tools together. There's a reason why I'm not starting there. I think it's good to lay out some of the foundations and show some of the general workflows before we get into exotic, multi-container slimming. But we'll get there, and I'm thinking Bitwarden is a great candidate for that.
Excellent.
And also, Tanho, thanks for pointing out that a curl request won't create the WebSocket connection, which is another reason why curl was a poor choice in my example earlier. But thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, actually, Tan is one of my better R friends, if you say, on the streaming world, and he and I do a lot of Shiny development. We were thinking that one way that you might trick the app into kind of rendering in this process is to maybe think about ways we can invoke a headless browser kind of like utility in the process. Yes. Like Phantom.js has been used by a package called Shiny Test to let me basically automate the process of UI clicking sliders and clicking checkboxes and grabbing screenshots and that. I wonder if we can put our heads together and mirror something like that, or some of the headless Chrome stuff.
We absolutely should, because I did start investigating with Phantom.js as well.
Nice. Cool.
So yes, let's do that thing, and let's see if we can integrate that in some generic way to exercise the more sophisticated applications, so you don't have to have toggles to sort of suppress their efficiencies that you do want in a production deployment. Right, and for those of you that are following along and haven't had a go with DockerSlim yet, why not? Go on, pick an app, write an app like Eric did. Give it a try. I know there are some people out there who still haven't done a lot with containers at all. So create a real simple app, a simple container, and then use DockerSlim. And if it works, brilliant, job done. And if it doesn't, come and find me and tell me about it, and we'll use this as another showcase to dig into some of the more advanced use of DockerSlim and and then we can also create more of these recipes in order to make it easier for people coming with other languages and stuff in the future. Right, Ayse, have you got anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
My biggest takeaway is that, yes, data scientists are going to be empowered by this technology, but Eric said power corrupts, or that's what I heard, what I understood. So it needs to be used responsibly. So yeah, like it's really brilliant that like in any system where there is no trace of R, it is pristine, but you can run a very advanced application using containerization. It's, I think, really cool, but making sure that you understand the inner infrastructure is important. So I'm excited about the learning journey and the adventure, and I'm glad that Eric sort of promised that he's going to be looking into how I'm learning and improving myself in the process. So I'm excited.
Cool.
And Eric, is there anything else you'd like to touch on before we sign off?
Well, just that I'm really excited to kind of keep leveraging this great emerging technology, and I'm definitely a learner for life, if you will, on all these great ways to integrate R with other systems and making sure that we're taking the best advantage of data science workflows and getting greater analyses out of it. So if you want to hear me talk about R more, that Martin has my R podcast up at r-podcast.org. And like I said, my other ventures are the Shiny Developer series, where I've actually done some live streamings that some of you have been watching recently. And I got more to come where, get this, I'll integrate R with Python for a Shiny app. So we all get along, folks. And then also the R Weekly Highlights, where I give a quick summary of all the top stories in the R community each week. But it's been a pleasure to be here and looking forward to further collaboration.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us, Eric. We look forward to doing some more with you, and we'll have you on again for sure to explain, what we've learned and how we've improved things as we go. So, Slim.AI and Yannick, I see that you're asking about tutorials how to create contained apps. We don't have time to get into that right now, but look, come and join the Slim.AI Discord. Ask your questions and I'll be more than happy to point you in the right direction. I can see that Peter's giving you a couple of quick pointers, but let me know what language you're interested in using, Yannick, and I'll give you a hand and get you bootstrapped. Right. Well, thank you all very much for joining, and we will see you next time, which will be in 2 days. So thank you all, and goodbye for now.
See you later.